holy as Sabbath morning. I'm not too sure about that one. But what I will say to you is if someone's got a Bible handy, turn to Ezekiel chapter 44 and verse 18. And whoever gets there first can read it out with a preacher's voice. And don't worry if it seems like a bit of a weird thing. There's a reason why I'm saying this. Ezekiel 44 verse 18. It says, they shall wear linen bonnets upon their heads.
They shall have linen bonnets upon their heads,
Yes.
and they shall have linen breeches upon their loins.
Yes.
They shall not gird themselves with anything that causes sweat.
Aha, thank you. Did you get that? They shall not gird themselves with anything that causes sweat. So I've taken my jacket off, because if it makes me sweat, I'm going against the Bible. See, sometimes people say, when you stand in a pulpit, you've got to wear your jacket. You've got to... I was in SDA-Church, and I didn't take a jacket. And our dear brother, the pastor there, he looked at me and said, Elder, where's your jacket? I said, I didn't bring a jacket. He said, Elder, you can't go in the pulpit without a jacket. I said, I didn't bring a jacket. So he sent one of the elders, and they went to the lost property, and they found 2 jackets. And they brought them back, and they said, try them on. And I tried on one jacket, and it just fit quite nicely, actually. He said, please wear that, then you go up and preach. And so I went up to preach, and when I got up there, I said to the congregation, let's look at Ezekiel 44 and verse 18. And I could take the jacket off again. The next year I went back there, I wore a waistcoat. He said, okay, you can wear the waistcoat. And he wore a waistcoat as well. So, what are we looking at? I don't have a clicker. Is that because we haven't used it? Or? Okay, lovely. Thank you. So, what are we looking at? What did we start with Friday evening? Five something.
5 steps.
5 steps to evangelism. Yes. Then this morning, what did we look at? The 5 alls of witnessing. And then this afternoon, we got the number 5 again. The 5 types of preaching. Now, what you will notice is that we're taking it step by step. So we started off by saying, okay, let's look at Christ's method. We look at Christ's method. There were 5 steps that Christ took to evangelism, to calling people to follow him. This morning, we looked at the 5 alls of witnessing. Do you remember what those 5 alls were?
Power.
All power. You might have to go back and review it. But basically, we talked about the 5 alls. It was all power and 4 others. So, what we want to look at now is how do we put this in practice? So that's what this afternoon is going to be like. You remember the verse that we finished this morning with was Revelation 14:6, and that was that cry to go out, another angel flying in the midst of heaven. And you know, the angel represents a messenger. The angel represents God's messengers, God's people. So this angel, it's not an actual angel flying around the world shouting out a message. It's saying, no, this is Christ's people. This is Christ's church. And they're flying in the midst of heaven. It means they're going out in the world. And they have the everlasting gospel to preach. Now, the emphasis I'm going to say is on the word preach. Because they preach to them that dwell on the earth. To every nation, every kindred, every tongue, and every people. And this word preach, it comes from the word, it's the Greek word, euangelizo. Euangelizo, this is where we get the word evangelize from. And it means to announce the good news. So when we talk about doing evangelism, it means announcing the good news. That's why anybody can and should evangelize. Anybody can and should be an evangelist. Because all you're doing is announcing the good news. Particularly the gospel. So this word means to declare the gospel, to show, preach the good tidings. In Luke chapter 4 and verse 18, Here Jesus said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, the recovering of sight to the blind, and to set at liberty them that are bruised. So who is he sent to? There is the list of people: the poor, the brokenhearted, the captives, those who are captive in sin, and the blind, those who can't see. It doesn't mean literally blind, it means those who can't see spiritually. And to set at liberty them who are bruised. And we are all bruised people, because we're all suffering the effects of sin. Now, interestingly, in Luke 4:18, the word preach there is not the same word. This uses the word keruso. Now, keruso means to herald, to publicly proclaim. Like a town crier. This is this gentleman here. He is a town crier. Do you think he looks like me? Yeah, there's some resemblance there. It's my uncle, actually. My uncle was a town crier in a little town of Katikati in New Zealand. And he would put on this costume, and he would go out with the bell, and he would ring the bell, and he'd say, "Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye," and then he'd announce whatever the news was. And it would be like an event that was taking place. It was just some information he was giving out. But he was fulfilling this role of being the town crier, of preaching, of proclaiming, of publishing. So Luke chapter 4:18 and 4:15 says that we're to go out and keruso, preach the acceptable year of the Lord. Now, what does that mean, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord? What we're talking about here is to say, Jesus is coming. Now is the time to repent. Now is the time to come to Christ. Not yesterday, not tomorrow. Now. Now, as Jesus said at one point, now when you hear my voice, now is the time for you to repent. Now, if you look at Matthew chapter 11 and verse 1, it came to pass when Jesus had made an end of commanding, of teaching the 12 disciples. Remember this morning we looked at this teaching is part of the 5 alls. He taught the 12 disciples, and then he departed from there to teach and to preach, to keruso in their cities. And the same word is used when Jesus is instructing his disciples. Proclaim, teach, spread the good news. In Luke chapter 9 and verse 60, here is a man comes to Jesus and he says, "Look, I want to follow you, but I've got a relative who's died. Let me go and bury my relative, and then I will come and follow you." And Jesus said to him, "Let the dead bury their dead, but you go and preach," diangelo, preach the kingdom of God. Here's another word that's being used. Greek is amazing, because you've got several words that all get translated virtually the same in English, but there's a slight difference in the meaning. Now, Jesus wasn't being rotten to this guy when he said, "Let the dead bury their dead." What he's basically saying is, look, you've heard the gospel, you have the newness of life in you. Now is not the time to be about doing all these other things. Now is the time to preach the gospel. It's the same for us. When the instruction comes out, let's go and preach the gospel. How many times in church do you hear the pastor or the elders stand up and say, "Right, we're going out to do evangelism. Oh, do you know what? I'd love to go, but I've got to go home and make the bed. I've got to go and build the cabinet. I've got to go and do this, do that, do the other." And it's always worldly things. And Jesus is saying, let the world deal with the worldly things. You've been called to step out of the world. So he says this word diangelo here, which means to herald thoroughly, to declare the gospel, to signify what is happening at the moment. And what does this actually mean to do that? Well, we look at Isaiah 58, verses 5 to 8. Here, Isaiah 58:5 says, "Do you think the Lord wants you to give up eating and act as humble as a bent-over bush?" How many of you do fasting? Fasting and prayer? Yeah? Okay. When you fast, do you have a good face or a bad face?
Good face.
You know, there's some people, when you see them, they're looking miserable. And you say to them, why are you looking so miserable? I'm fasting. Fasting, man. And it's a burden for them. Oh, I haven't eaten in 2 hours. Killing me. You know, I have an issue with the Muslims, because the Muslims, when it comes to Ramadan, they say to me, John, we're fasting. And I go, really? Are you really fasting? They go, John, do you do fasting? And I say, well, yeah, we do like 24-hour fasts. And they go, we do 30-day fasts. And I go, yeah, but you don't really, do you? Because what you do is you get up early in the morning before the sun rises and you eat as much as you can, and then you coast through the day until the sun sets, and then you eat as much as you can. Do you know, this is one of these weird facts, in Islam, Muslims fast 1 month out of every year. During that month, there is an increase in heart disease, diabetes, and obesity, because they cram so much food in and around the time when they're fasting that they actually put on weight during that time. Now, Jesus said this. He says, do you think the Lord wants you to give up eating and to act as humble as a bent-over bush, or dress in sackcloth and sit in ashes? Is it really what he wants on a day of worship? Now, we kind of sit there and we go, well, yeah, didn't he tell us that we should fast and pray? But then Isaiah goes on and he says, I'll tell you what it really means to fast, to worship the Lord. Is this the fast that I've chosen? To loose the bands of the wicked, to remove the prisoners, the chains of the prisoners who are chained unjustly, to free those who are abused. Now, notice what Isaiah is saying. He's saying, really, the fast that you're called to is not that you just go, I'm not eating food. What good is that doing somebody else? It's not. You may get a spiritual benefit from it. You may get a physical benefit. I'm not saying that you don't. But I'm saying, look at the bigger picture. How is that helping somebody else? And then in verse 7, he says, and I'm reading this from, this is the contemporary English version. We've got the King James up on the screen. So I'm just going to read this modern paraphrase. Share your food with everyone who is hungry. Share your home with the poor and the homeless. Give clothes to those in need. Don't turn away your relatives. Now think about that. How easy is it to fast? Well, I'm going to suggest it's relatively easy, actually. You just stop eating. Yes, you might be moaning and groaning. Your body might be going, feed me, and you kind of overcome that mentally. But how about if instead of doing that, you took the food that you would have eaten and took it and gave it to somebody who's hungry? Now then you're benefiting yourself and them. What about this? Now I'm gonna bring something to you. I struggled with this. I met a guy who was homeless out on the street, and I said to him, where do you sleep? And he said, I sleep under a bush in the park. And I went, wow. That was pretty heavy because it wasn't summertime. It was a tough time to be sleeping rough. And I said to him, but that's really, I mean, how do you cope with that? He goes, oh, it's okay. And I said to him, and you're able to get up in the morning? He says, oh, I've got my alarm clock that wakes me up in the morning. And I said, really? You've got an alarm clock? He said, yeah. And the way he said it, I said, what's your alarm clock? And he said, the police come along and kick me in the head until I wake up, and then I get up and move on. And I thought, wow. And I went back to my home, and I had a floor in the front room. And I thought, actually, this guy could be sleeping on the floor in my front room. And I had a struggle. I had a spiritual struggle. Did I go and bring this guy home? And my wife wakes up in the morning and goes, oh, what's this guy doing laying here? Other people said to me, John, if you do that, bear in mind you've got your daughter sleeping upstairs. You don't know who this guy is. You don't know what could happen. You've got your family there. You can't just... And I started to really... I wrestled with this one. But is this what Christ is calling me to do? Is he saying, give up, sacrifice? Somebody came to us one day and he said, I met a guy out on the street. He's an American guy. He's been mugged. Hasn't got his money, hasn't got his passport, nothing. And he's got nowhere to stay. Can you help him out? And we said, bring him. And so the guy brought him to our house, and he then slept on our sofa for the next 10 days. And while he was there, we talked to him, we chatted with him. He thought the work that I did was hilarious because I was working as a prison law advocate, which means that I go into prisons and defend prisoners who get in trouble inside the prison. And he thought this was hilarious. He said, in America, we throw them in prison, we lock them up, throw away the key. And he used to say to me, he said, I really appreciate what you're doing. And he said to me, I trade in stocks and shares and oil and all this kind of stuff. He says, I'm not a poor person, but because I got mugged, because I lost everything, I can't repay you. And I said, it's cool, don't worry about it. And he said, no. He said, when I get back to America, he said, give me your bank details. I'm going to transfer £1 million into your account. Now, what would you say if someone said to you, I'm going to transfer £1 million into your account? I'd be going, all right then, okay. What I actually said was, I said to him, mate, I'm not doing this because I think you're going to give me £1 million. I'm doing this because you're a soul in trouble. I can help you out. I said, now, if you go home to America and you send me £1 million, praise the Lord, I'd be very happy. But if you go back to America and you don't send me £1 million, it's okay. I'm not doing it because I'm wanting something from you. I'm doing it, just want to help you out. And guess what? Eventually he went back to America. And he arrived in America and he thought about us. And do you know how much he sent to our bank account? Zero. You've never heard from him again. But you know what? I don't care. Because I know that during those 10 days we looked after the guy. That's the only reason we did it. So here, verse 7 here, do you know what this is actually saying? If you translate this into modern language, here God is saying through Isaiah, open a food bank, feed people, give them clothes, help them out. And then, what's the result of doing that? Well, it comes in the next verse, verse 8. Then your light will shine like the dawning sun, and you will quickly be healed. Wow, isn't that something? Help other people out and you will be healed. Your honesty will protect you as you advance, and the glory of the Lord will defend you from behind. Now, really, what's being said here is trust in God. God is saying, this is what you should do. And if you trust Him and do it, He will bring amazing things. James chapter 2, verses 14 to 19. Should be coming up. Yeah, there we go. What does it profit, my brethren, though a man say he has faith and has not works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding you give him not those things which are needful to the body, what does it profit? What good is that? Even so, faith, if it has not works, is dead, being alone. Now, should I translate this a little bit? What God is actually saying here is, if somebody comes to you and says, I'm hungry, I haven't eaten for 3 days, what should your response be? I'll pray for you. I'll pray that the Lord will send you food. No. Because God's saying, I sent him to you so that you could feed him. And you're just going to pray. And, excuse me. You notice I said just going to pray. I don't mean to demean prayer. Prayer is very powerful and we should be praying all the time. But don't use it to replace practical godliness. Practical godliness is where you take somebody that's in need and you help them. So, for example, if somebody comes to me and they say, I'm hungry, and I say, I'm praying for you, I'm praying that the Lord will rain down food upon your head. How does that help? It doesn't at all. But if I say to him, hey, let's go into this cafe here, I'm going to buy you a sandwich and a cup of tea. Does that help him? Yes. Now, while he's got that sandwich and that cup of tea, and maybe I've got a cup of tea for myself, I'm going to sit there and now I'm going to start to talk to him. And what am I going to say to him? Repent and follow Jesus? No. I'm going to say, what is it, man? What brought you to this situation? What's happening in life? I'm going to get to know this person. I'm going to befriend him. And I'm going to start by God's grace, to give him a little bit of advice. And maybe when we finish the conversation, I've got, unlike nowadays, but maybe I've got £5 or £10 in my pocket. I take it out of my pocket, I press it in his hand, and I say, brother, here's a little something to help you on your way. And maybe arrange to meet up with him the next day, or somewhere in 2 days' time. Now, as that person walks away, what are they thinking about you? Most of the time, their response is going to be, wow. There is somebody who has compassion, who showed me love, who helped me out. And what you're doing is you're beginning a friendship with that person. And so we talk about friendship evangelism. When you go out and meet people, you don't meet them just so you can hand them a tract and say, come to church, repent or die. You meet them so that you can befriend them, become their friend, and let them see Jesus working in you. Then you don't have to say, repent. You don't have to say, come to the Lord, because they see something in you and they say, what? What is it? What's motivating you? What makes you this person that you are? And you will reveal Jesus Christ to them. You don't have to tell them about Christ. You show them about Christ. So, this is one of the reasons why people spiritually sleep after baptism. Because we bring people through these stages. We bring them into baptism and they go, right, what do I do now? And you basically say, come to church, sing songs, read the Bible, and that's it. And they go, all right. And what happens? Eventually they start to nod off and they come to church and they become pew warmers, seat warmers. The only purpose of being in church is just because, oh, it's my duty, I have to be in church once a week and I can go. I've done my duty and everything's cool. Instead of saying there's something beyond that, we can go a little bit further. And also letting people know that we are called to preach the gospel. So, to put it another way, I have been called to preach. And you sit there and you go, yeah, no, I get it, John. You're standing at the pulpit preaching. We get it. But you have been called to preach. My way of preaching is not the same as your way of preaching. Your way of preaching might be just by smiling at somebody. Just showing them a nice face. Your way of preaching might be by giving them a cup of tea. Your way of preaching might be just listening when they've got problems, being that listening ear to help them unburden their problems. So, preaching. What is preaching? There's 5 types of preaching I'm going to talk about in the next. Let's see if we can wrap this up in half an hour. So if I start to go off to one side, pull me back. So, number 1. Speaking Christ. This is what we normally think of as preaching. Standing up, declaring the gospel, preaching. And this can range from the regular preaching, standing in front of people, whether in a church or a hall or even on TV, and pronouncing the good news of the gospel. 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 2. I think it's coming up, is it? No, it's not. Okay. But 2 Timothy chapter 4 verse 2 says, preach the word, be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. What does that mean? It means when you bump into somebody, preach. My wife's sitting on a train. There's a girl sitting opposite on her mobile phone. And she's talking, and my wife doesn't know what the conversation really is all about, but the girl's getting really upset and there's some desperate conversation. And when she puts the phone down, my wife says to her, are you all right? And the girl looks at my wife. There's a young girl, my wife is my age, an older person. And the girl looks at her and her attitude is, who are you? Why are you talking to me? What do you want to know? And my wife said, well, I just see that you're upset. I just wondered, is there anything that I can say or do to help you? And the girl's very resistant. And so my wife says, would you like me to pray for you? And all of a sudden, all the resistance went, and the girl then says, look, it's my friend. She's about to do something really stupid, and I'm telling her not to do it, but she needs prayer. And so my wife stops and prays with this girl right there on the train. And when the girl gets off, the girl turns around to my wife and says, "Thank you so much." She said, "I really needed that. Thank you for reaching out." Now, my wife could have been rebuffed. When the girl went, "Who are you? Why are you talking to me?" My wife could have gone, "All right," then, and left her alone. But she persisted. And afterwards, the girl was thankful because there was that little bit of reaching out. So preaching, speaking Christ, is also means having personal conversations with people. When you talk to somebody about Christ, you know, the way that we do this, there's lots of ways that we can speak Christ to somebody. When you ever phoned up some organization, whether electricity, phone company, government organization, how many of you phone people up and have to talk to them on the phone? Yeah, at some point, we all do. How do you end the conversation? Do you end up by going, "Yeah, okay then, right, laters, bye," and put the phone down? Or do you go, "Thank you, may God bless you," and then pause for a second and put the phone down? Have you ever tried doing that? Sometimes we don't like to show our faith. I love to do that. Because when I speak to somebody, particularly salespeople, I say, "God bless," and they go, "Oh, and God bless you as well." I think, I've done something. I've dropped a little seed in there. And some people, they don't know how to respond, but others, suddenly, they become very Christian in their response. One girl I was talking to, it was to do with our water bill. And I was saying I wanted to get my water bill down. I was talking with her, and she ended up trying her hardest to reduce our water bill. She couldn't actually do it. She tried every way. She couldn't do it. And I said, "Listen, never mind. I'm really grateful that you've done that. And I just pray that God blesses you for taking the time to try and help us." And she said to me, "What religion are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm a Christian. What are you?" She said, "I'm a Muslim." And she said, "But I really wish I could have helped you because you sounded so nice, and the fact that you wish me God's blessings." And I said, "Sure." I said, "Because we all need God in our lives." And she said, "Yeah, we do." And suddenly now we're having a conversation. I'm preaching the gospel. Just on this conversation. Just because I'm saying to her, "God bless you." So the use of these words, and sometimes you say, "God bless," and you put the phone down, you don't know the effect on that person's mind. It resonates. And then somebody else comes along and says something similar. Maybe I've spoken to the person and you speak to them the next day. And you're also saying, "God bless you." And they're going, "Hey, wait a minute. Maybe God's talking to me." You're dropping little seeds. Let's look at another way you can speak Christ. Street witnessing. Now, I don't know, what do you think about street witnessing? Have you ever tried street witnessing? Have you done it?
I ruined Darlington.
You ruined Darlington. Okay.
I ruined Darlington.
Oh, High Road, Darlington, right. I hate it. Put me in a church, in an auditorium in front of 1,000 people, I will preach the gospel. Put me on the street and say to me, "John, preach the gospel." I'm like, do I have to?
But I think with street preaching, you've got to be careful.
Nowadays you have.
Because it's a coin with two faces.
Yeah.
It's either a force for good or a force for bad.
Or it's a way to get yourself arrested.
Yeah, alright. Well, I know enough from their preachers that put more people off than...
And this is, now thank you. You see, now you just introduced the next part of what I'm going to say.
Sorry,
No, that's a really good segue. I'm walking down my local high street, and there's a guy there doing the street preaching. He's got the microphone, he's got the amplifier with the loudspeaker, and he's giving it all this. You're going to burn in hellfire, and Jesus is going to come, and if you're not ready, you're all going to burn, you're all sinners. And I looked at my wife, and I said, "What's this guy doing?" And I'm saying to my wife, "This guy is wasting everybody's time. He's preaching the wrong message." And I'm starting to go into one. And my wife, who's such a patient little soul, she looks at me and she goes, "Maybe not. Maybe it's just not your way of doing it." And I'm going, "No, look at all these people. They're all walking past. Nobody's paying attention." Because as I said it, I've seen one guy sitting on a bench going, looking at the guy like this. And I turned to my wife and I went, yeah, actually you're right. Because he's preaching to that one guy there. And heaven rejoices over one soul. So you can preach to 100 people and it has no effect. But if you're preaching to one person and it has the effect on them. And I had to shut my mouth and walk gently down that road. Because I didn't know what I was talking about. I'm saying, oh, it's the wrong attitude, you shouldn't do that. But one person was being affected. We took a choir out into a city centre. We sang songs to the shoppers and the passers-by, Christian songs. And they said to me, Elder, when the singing finishes, you're on. I took a deep breath and I picked up the microphone and I started to deliver a message and tell people that Jesus is coming soon and rethink your lives and blah, blah. And then we started giving out books. And everybody we went to hand them a book, they went, no, thank you, no, and went on to shopping. And I thought, I don't know what we're doing here. We're not achieving anything, we're not giving away any books, we're doing nothing. And some little children, this kind of age, were there. And they said, can we give out books? And we kind of went, yeah, right then. Because in my mind, I'm going, yeah, kids, go on then. And they took the books, and the same people that refused from us, when they saw the little kids, they went, oh, you're so cute. And the children were going, can I give you a book? They go, oh, thank you, that's so cute. And they're taking the books and walking off. And once again, I'm left standing there going, John, how can you get it so wrong? Because what I couldn't do, the little child could do. I want to give you one other example, and I'd said you've got to control me, but I want to give you this because I quite like this one. I was in Florida. We were doing a campaign in Florida. And they said to me, John, you've got a day off. What do you want to do on your day off? And I said, what is there to do? And they said, the beach. The beach is good. The beach. Yeah, let's go to a beach in Florida. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to a beach in America. But in this country, how do we go to the beach? You carry down your hampers and everything, you go and you sit on the pebbles and all that kind of thing. No, in America, they drive their car onto the beach. And they open up their car and they start playing the sound system, they get their cooler boxes out and their camping chairs, and it's a massive day out. And we went to the picnic, to the beach, and that's what we did. We established our little camp there. And then you go down the beach and there's all these different cars, all with people establishing their little family outings. We took with us a box of books to give out. And we went down to every car saying, would you like a book? Would you like a book? Would you like a book? To a man, they went, no thanks, no thanks, no thanks. And we got back to the car a little bit despondent because we did think maybe we could give out a few books down here, but nobody wanted them. And a dirty, smelly tramp, reeking of alcohol, came up and went, "You're giving out books?" And we went, "Yeah." And he said, "I'll have one." We thought, "Yeah, if you go away, you can have a book." And he took a book and off he went. 5 minutes later, he comes back. "Got any more of those books?" "Yeah, did you want another one?" "Yeah, give me a book." Off he goes. 5 minutes later, he comes back. "Have you got any more of those books?" "Well, how many do you want?" "How many have you got?" So we took a pile of books. We said, "There you are." He went, "All right," and off he went. We said, "What's this guy doing?" And so we followed him down the beach. And he was going to all the cars that we'd been to, and he's going up with a book in his hand going, "Give me $1 for a book." And people went, "Yeah, I'll give you $1 if you go away." And they gave him $1, they took a book. Now, here's the interesting bit. They'd taken the book, but they paid $1 for the book. Or in other words, they paid money for it. So they're not just going to throw it away, they want to get their dollar's worth. So as we followed him down the beach, all the people are sitting there reading these books. And we said, "Well, how does this work?" God can use the strangest of people in the strangest of ways, but everybody on that beach was not just had a copy of the book, but they were reading the book as well. And bless his heart, that man was collecting his dollar for every book as well. There's another way of doing speaking Christ, and that's door to door. Door to door. When I joined the church, everybody went out on a Sunday. Everybody went door to door, knocking on doors. Now, I'm an Englishman. You don't do that. You don't disturb me, not on my day. You don't come to my house and start talking to me about religion. I was brought up, part of my upbringing was in a public house. My father was a publican, a landlord, and he said to me, John, if you're running a pub, if you're working in a pub, 3 things you don't allow people to talk about: sex, politics, religion. He said, those 3 things will bring fights into your pub. None of it. If they start talking about it, shut it down. So I was used to this idea that's things you don't talk about. So somebody comes to my door, I want to tell you about Jesus. No, thank you. No. But this country has changed. We're now a multicultural country. And some cultures, particularly from Africa and the Caribbean, they actually accept and quite like when someone comes to the door and talks about Jesus. So it's a method that actually still works, and people are still being brought into the church because of it. But let's move on to something else as well. Number 2. Showing Christ. So we dealt with speaking Christ, now we're talking about showing Christ. Showing Christ is demonstrating Christ in your behavior to others. This is feeding, like we spoke about doing a food bank, something like that. But just inviting people for food, sharing your food, visiting people in the hospital, visiting people in prison, tending to people, being the personification of Christ to those around you. And notice that a major part of Christ's ministry was tending to the needs of people around you. In Matthew chapter 5 and verse 14, he said, you are the light of the world. A city that's set on a hill cannot be hid. So we should be that city on a hill, that people know who we are by what we do. Not because we come into this building once a week, but because when we're out and about, we're actually showing the light of the world. Now, number 3, this is a really interesting one. This is messaging Christ. How many of you have got a mobile phone? Yeah, everybody. You don't have it? Yeah, you do have a mobile phone. Right. A 2, okay. Have you heard about mobile ministry? Mobile phone ministry. So, how many of you use WhatsApp? Yeah? You don't use WhatsApp? Yeah, I was going to say, everybody uses WhatsApp. Facebook. Do you use Facebook? Yeah, I try not to, but I still go back to it ever so often. This is a very good way of doing ministry. WhatsApp, you set up a WhatsApp group for Bible studies. Have you heard of a WhatsApp broadcast group? Broadcast group is really interesting. I think you can put up to 50 people, it used to be, maybe it's more now. You put in one group and you broadcast a message. You broadcast a message, it can be a scripture, it can be a spiritual question, and you ask people to respond. But when they respond, only you see the response, not the other 49 people in the group. So that means you can say something like, do you go out and preach the gospel? And everybody knows when they respond, they're only responding to you. And so you can ask questions, and people will come back and they will ask you questions, and you can respond to them. And you can set it up in such a way that every week you put out a Bible study, and then let people respond to you in your broadcast group. Facebook, I really used to talk down, because they think it's a waste of time. People put stupid little things up there, and everybody's going like, love, it doesn't do anything. And then I spoke to a church sister, and she said, oh, I do Bible studies. And I go, really, on Facebook? Why don't you go into someone's home and sit with them and do a Bible study? And she said, because they live in Pakistan. And I said, really? And she said, yes. People in Pakistan open up Facebook, go onto my page, and we're doing Bible studies. And she started to tell me about so many people in Pakistan wanting Bible studies. She doesn't physically have enough time to do them all. And she's trying to recruit people to work with her. She said the next thing that's happening is people are coming to her saying, I want to get baptized. Where do I go? How do I get baptized? And they're talking now about sneaking people into Pakistan to go and baptize people and then come out again. Who knew that you could go and preach the gospel in Pakistan? But over Facebook, apparently, as the sister showed me, you can do that. You can cross borders with the internet. And you do it all from the safety of your front room, of your bedroom, wherever you happen to log on. That's where you're doing it. So to put it another way, you don't even have to get out of bed to go to Pakistan and preach the gospel. Now, let's go on to number 4. Number 4 is teaching Christ. Now, there's some people who preach, there's some people who teach. What's the difference? The difference really is that a teacher tends to lead you through something in a logical way and will teach you about the Lord. The preacher stands up and preaches the gospel. The teacher teaches the gospel. Both are very necessary, both are slightly different. A preacher might lead somebody to someone who teaches, and a teacher will not get all jumpy and shouty and enthusiastic like that. The teacher will just say, okay, let's look at this verse, let's look at that verse, and let's build slowly together. So there are different ways that you can teach. You develop your method. If you feel I've been called to teach the gospel to people, develop your method. And like I say, you can do it online as well. And then the last one, the last method. This is very simply living Christ. What does it mean to live the Christian lifestyle? It's very close to showing Christ, but it actually can be passive. So, for example, I go and sit down with my Jewish friends, my Muslim friends, and they ask me if I want to eat food. And I say to them, yeah, but what are you eating? Because I don't eat pork, I don't eat this, I don't eat that. And they say, hey, John, it's halal. We're Muslim, it's halal. And I say, yes, but I'm more halal than you are. Or in other words, I can eat some things that are on your plate, but you can eat anything that's on my plate. And they say, what are you talking about? We follow the same laws from the Old Testament. And I said, no, you don't. Because actually, Muhammad liked to eat camel. And camel is an unclean meat. So you guys can eat camel. I can't. Because it's part of the Mosaic law to say I can't eat camel. And they go, really? I've never heard of that. I say, okay, let's sit down. Let's discuss it. Let's look at the actual laws where you get your idea of halal and not halal from. I was in Pakistan and I was invited to go and see two members of the government. I went to a gentleman's club, and in the gentleman's club you're escorted by somebody who takes you to the private room where the government ministers are sitting. He knocked on the door, there was a pause, and they went, enter, and he brought me in and he announced me, and they said to him, okay, you can go, and he said his goodbyes and closed the door behind him. And they said to me, would you like a drink? And I saw there was a carton of orange juice and a carton of pineapple juice. And I looked and I said, oh, I said, yes, some orange juice would be really nice. And they went, we can do better than that. And they reached down behind one of the chairs and pulled out a bottle of vodka and said, would you like vodka and orange? And what did I do? I went, la halal, haram, I can't have that. No, I don't drink alcohol. And they looked at me and they said, are you Muslim? I said, no, I'm a Christian. But you don't drink alcohol? I said, no, and you're a Muslim, right? And they went, yeah. And I said, and you are drinking alcohol, right? We had a very interesting discussion that day. And the number of Muslims that have pulled out alcohol and offered it to me when I go to see them, because they go, white face, drinks. You know, when you're reaching out to Muslims, sometimes if you tell a Muslim that you're a Christian, it works against you. Because they know about Christians. They eat pork, they drink alcohol, they gamble, they fornicate. That's what they know about Christians. And so they will put you in that little Christian box. When they ask me, what are you? I tend to say to them, there's two responses. If I know it's a proper Muslim, I say I'm Ahl al-Kitab. Ahl al-Kitab is a phrase from the Quran. It means one of the people of the book. And it always generates conversation. What does it mean, one of the people of the book? I say, well, I forbid what God has forbidden, what Allah has forbidden, and I'm looking for the last days. Because that's the definition of Seventh-day Adventists. We forbid what God's forbidden, and we're looking for the last days. beautiful conversation started, because now they want to know, what do you believe? Where do you get your beliefs from? I'm a Bible-believing Ahlak Kitab. I get all my beliefs from the Bible. And they go, so you're not a Christian? And I say, no, because if I tell you I'm a Christian, you're going to think that I eat pork, I drink alcohol, I fornicate, I gamble. I said, I don't do any of those. I am what you call Hanif. I'm one of the God-fearing people. Oh, the conversations that come from that. Suddenly, now they're interested. They want to know, where do I get this from in the Bible? So we can present ourselves in certain ways from our lifestyle. And I told you about the woman that went up to my wife and I as we walked down the street. You're Christians. I don't know why. There was just something in her mind. She saw us and said, Christians. 1 John chapter 5, verse 10. He that believeth on the Son of God has the witness in himself. He that believeth not God has made him a liar, because he believed not the record that God gave of his Son. Yes, sir.
Usually tell them I'm Muslim as well.
Say again?
Usually tell them I'm a Muslim as well.
Do you know, I don't. Because I'm very quickly going to tell them I'm not. Because to be a Muslim means I have to believe that Muhammad was a prophet. And if they say to me, do you believe that Muhammad is a prophet? I go, show me one prophecy this man made. And they can't, because I know there isn't one. This is something I study years now. It's not just the beard. I actually study. I study with an academy out in Saudi Arabia. I'm in my second year of studies at the moment. I don't know when I finish my studies whether I become an imam or not. But I'm doing it so that I can talk on a specific level with Muslims. That's why in certain parts of the church, they refer to me as imam, actually. There was someone from General Conference, we were holding a meeting, and he said to me, I'm going to get our imam to pray. And everybody went, what? I said, here, John is our imam. So I said, okay. So, sorry, I lost my thread now. What was I saying? I was saying about the way that we witness. There was something else I was going to tell you, but maybe for time we're just going to jump past it. So it's all about witnessing Christ. Now, what about witness? What is witness? He that is the Son of God hath the witness in himself. What is the word witness? Marturia. Marturia. From martus, from which we get the word martyr. Interestingly, marturia can also mean evidence. So giving evidence judicially. So what are we doing? We are giving evidence. We are bearing record, the report, the testimony, or the witness of Jesus Christ. The idea of the Christian giving witness in him or herself, what does this mean? Well, it means, like I say, walking down the road and people going, you are a Christian. When I first met my wife doesn't remember this, but I remember this very clearly. I met her before I was an Adventist. And before I became an Adventist, I was a drinking, smoking, swearing, ragamuffin guy. And so when I used to talk to my wife, I could never say something was good. I always had to use an expletive with it. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was never, oh, that's good. It's always, that's beep, beep, good. And when I used to use that word, my wife used to go, like that. And I used to say to her, what happened then? And she'd say, oh, that word that you used. And I'd look at her and say, do you ever watch TV? Because people use these words all the time on TV. If you're walking on the street, everybody uses these words. What's your problem? And she'd say, no, I don't like those words. I don't like those words. And I used to think she was stuck up. I used to think, I don't know what's wrong with her. And so sometimes I used to swear in front of her deliberately just to see her go, like this. And I used to laugh at her. And then I became a Christian. And now when people swear in front of me, you know what happens? Inside my head I'm going, I don't want to hear those words anymore. Because you get converted. God changes you. And all of a sudden the things that you did you don't do anymore. The things that you liked you don't like anymore. And now I'm the one that says to people, don't swear. I've got a guy, he comes to talk to me, he's an Irishman, ex-Irish boxer. And he's effing this and effing that and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And we're standing outside the church. And I'm going, Paddy, because every Irishman's called Paddy apparently. And I say to him, Paddy, please. And he goes, oh, we're outside the beeping church, yes. I forgot about it. But never mind, you know me, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, can you just control it? And he's going, and he basically says, no, I can't. That's the way I talk. That's the way I am. And I have to just deal with him. But slowly but surely, you know what? I was going to tell you this bit as well. I deal with him. I tolerate him. And now he's got a girlfriend. And he comes to me and he says, God, or as he calls me, Moses. He says, Moses, when are you going to be at church? And I said, I'll be at church tomorrow. He goes, right, I'm bringing the girl. Because he wants me to talk to her because she's going through some things. And he needs someone to talk to her who he can trust to talk to her. So he comes looking for Moses. Why? Because Moses is the guy that talks to him on a level and doesn't freak out because he can't control his swearing. And as I say, he's an ex-boxer. When he goes to shake your hand, he grips your hand. And I look in his eyes and I go, you're doing this deliberately. So I've learned now that when I shake his hand, I get my hand really in tight so he's got nothing to grip, to crush. One day I was talking with him and put my hands like this as I was talking, and he grabbed both of my hands and squeezed them tight, and I'm like, almost crying. Right, let's finish off. Time's going. Summing it up, what are we doing? What does it mean to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ? It means to speak out boldly the good news of Jesus. It means, number 2, to show clearly what Christ has done and is doing in your life. You know, you've got a witness. You're aware of this? We've all got a witness. Some of us have got this dramatic witness. Some of us, well, actually, it's still dramatic, but in a different way. But we've all got a witness. Number 3, think about social media. Don't use social media to spread gossip. Use social media to spread the love of Christ. Because it's too easy to spread the gossip. And it's much more fun when you spread the love of Christ. Number 4, teach others what it means to be a Christian. Help them to understand the gospel. How can they understand? Come, let's reason together. Let's explore together. Teach them what it means. And then lastly, live Christ in your lives as a living witness, a living testimony of who Christ is. So I want to finish right here. We've got to the end of this. I didn't think I was going to get to the end, but I have. And I want to finish by just closing off with some encouragement. Plan to do something in your church. And do you know what? I love the fact that last night I spoke to half a church. This morning I spoke to like a lot of people in the church. And now we've got the remnant. But you know, I often say to people, if you want to see who is the church in the church, go to Wednesday night prayer meeting. Go to Sabbath school. See the people who actually come out for those meetings, not that come out on a Saturday morning because they have to. So I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to say this. Plan to do something in your church. So that means that me coming up here hasn't just been, oh, we had a visiting speaker. Oh, we had some guy that made us laugh, told us some stories. But actually, somebody came and made us think. And we started to think to ourselves, what can we do? Now, let's take this to be very practical. So let's make this the day that not just that we have an interesting talk, but the day that Darlington Church had a reformation. That something changed in Darlington Church where we said, you know what? We're going to do something different. We're going to do it a different way. Now, what can you do that's different? Give me 2 minutes just to talk about this. I have no idea, but I know a man who does. And you have to go and talk to that man first. So you remember at the very beginning I said you start everything with prayer. You go to the Lord and say, Lord, this is your field, your harvest field. What would you have me do here? You do it as an individual. Lord, what would you have me do? And he will inspire you. He will let you know what he wants you to do. But then also you do it corporately. Lord, what would you have us do? Because it's not enough that we sit here inside church. We've got to be going out and doing something. And let the Lord inspire you. And I'm going to make 1 or 2 suggestions. The most important thing that we have done in our church was starting up a food bank. I can't overemphasize this. This was how the sinners came to our church. They came because they were hungry and they wanted food, and we were giving away free food. And instead of buying food, they could then buy alcohol. They could then buy tobacco. So yes, we were enabling them in their vices. But you know what? I don't care. Because it got them to church. And the number of people we've spoken to with these vices who break down and start to get rid of their vices because now they're interacting with people. You know, when I was a drug taker, all the people I interacted with was drug takers. If you didn't take drugs, I'm not interested in you. Because I need people that reinforces what I'm doing, not people that make me feel I'm doing something wrong. Now, if you take somebody who's an alcoholic and you put him with people who say, don't drink. So people come down to the food bank, they've got a can of beer in their pocket. And I check them, is it open or closed? Oh, it's closed. I say, keep it in your pocket and I want to see it closed before you leave the food bank. And I tell them directly, if I see that can open, you're banned. You won't come back here. Or I'll give you a 2-week ban, or whatever it is. If it's open, you don't join the queue. You go across the road and you finish your beer, or you pour it down the drain, you do whatever, but you don't stand on the queue and drink it. Why? Because drunk people cause problems. And we've had drunk people pass out, we've had to call an ambulance, we've had drunk people picking fights with other people, just being generally obnoxious, so we clamp down on it. And guess what? They respect us because of it. And so they come and they keep the beer closed in their pocket. Some of them try to sneakily, sneakily do a little something. And we catch them. We say to them, you may be a smoker, but you don't smoke while you're here on the queue for the food. And if I see you, and they look at me and they go, yes, John, all right, yes. And when I see somebody, if I see a puff of smoke coming from somewhere, I go, who's smoking? And somebody will tell me eventually, and I say to them, you know what the answer is, you either put it out or you go across the road. And so yeah, they go across the road. They start to comply because they're having that interaction with somebody who's never spoken to them in that way before. And so somebody comes down to me and he says, I want to stop drinking. How do I stop drinking? And I gave my standard response, we'll pray for you. Now this guy, I've never met somebody like this before. He was a self-harmer. The way that he self-harmed was he set fire to his hair. I've never heard of anybody doing that before. But sometimes I'd see him and his hair would be all kind of... I said, what happened to your hair? Set fire to it. Like you do. But that was his way of self-harming. And he said to me, he said, I want to stop drinking. And I said, God will empower you. Turn to the Lord. Let him empower you. I'm going to pray for you. And I would pray for him. I would bring elders. We'd lay hands on him and we'd pray for him for God to stop him drinking. And he'd come back the next week and he'd look at me and he'd go, 7 days. I go, 7 days? Since I last had a drink, 7 days. I go, brilliant. And we'd pray for him. And he'd come back, 14 days. 14 days. We go, brilliant. And we'd pray for him. And he'd come back and he'd go, 2 days. What happened? Oh, yeah. I need your prayers. So we'd pray for him. And he said to me, he started coming every week, not for the food bank, but for prayer. He said that was how he got the power to overcome what was going on. He recognized the power of prayer. I saw him one day walking down the road with a mobile phone in his hand. He went from being a drunk with nothing to having his own flat, his own TV, got his driving license back, got a car, a van, got a driving job, and moved out of the district and got his life together. I don't know if he came to Christ, but I do know if anybody says to him, how did you get your life together? It's because he interacted with Christians. We became the power in his life. God became the power, and we represented God to him. It's really amazing what can happen. So I'm going to encourage you. Find what is needed in your area. The way to do it, prayerfully, write a list of all the things you're prepared to offer as a church. And then go door to door. I'm from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The who? That building across the road there. We're Seventh-day Adventists. We're a church. We've come to find out what we can do to help you. Would you like someone to come and cut your lawn, wash your car? You can think of what the things are that people might need. Somebody who's a shut-in, someone to do your shopping. And you offer to do things. Ask people, what do you think is necessary in this area? Provide for the needs of the community. So don't tell the community what they need, ask them what they need, and then provide it. Become a known force in the area. Become a center of influence. We used to talk about our churches being centers of influence. We have a defibrillator outside our church. You know what a defibrillator is? You know, if you have a heart attack or something? We got a letter through from whoever it is that provided it, and they said, "Thank you so much. Your defibrillator has been used 9 times in the last couple of months." And we went, "Really? We didn't even know. But we put it there. People have been using it. The ambulance crew know. If somebody drops on the street, they know quickly, down to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Get the defibrillator." Before, somebody said to them, "Go to the Seventh-day Adventist Church," they go, "Who? What? When?" They have no idea. So just these small little things, it puts you on the map. And that's what you want. And you want to be known not as the Seventh-day Adventist Church. You want to be known as the people who care in this community. Don't worry about taking Christ to them. That comes. That just naturally comes. Go back to Friday evening. Do the mingling. Do the sympathizing. Get to know people. And then say to them, "You may not be able to do something, but I know a man who can," and bring them to Christ. Okay, that's the end. Prakash, if you want to finish up, I don't know if we're going to open it up for questions. If we do, you've got a couple of minutes maybe. And then we'll have someone to pray to close. If there are no questions, it means one of two things. I either explain